Okay, so um, we start recording. Let me get it started. Um, Thank you, everyone, for joining on September 11th and spending this September 15th and spending your Friday with us. This presentation is going to be in particular for IES users who are interested what Pollination can do for them. This is the hello part for 5 minutes. Then I talk shortly about pollination. It shouldn't even be 5 minutes in general. And then we'll focus on pollination cat plugins and I'll do live demos during the presentation. And then we should have 15 to 20 minutes. But as I said, you can ask your questions at any point during the presentation using the chat, um, and we'll take it from there. John, am I okay to go ahead?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go. So questions that usual people ask, will we record this? Will it be available online? Yes, and yes. Will we share the presentation? Yes, we'll do that too. So don't worry, you'll get the slides. So with that, what's Pollination? Pollination is an ecosystem of tools for environmental building design and simulation. It is built and maintained by the same team who is maintaining Ladybug Tools. Ladybug Tools is our open source projects, and Pollination is our commercial product. They work together, and you will see some closer to the end of the presentation how they're going both to stay around. I know some people have this um, question if Pollination is going to replace Ladybug Tools. No, that's not the plan. They are very separate and they do different things. But Pollination is built on top of Ladybug Tools. So what are Pollination products? Pollination has a set of products on desktop and cloud side. The CAP plugins are the desktop applications that we have built. Then you have Pollination apps in the middle, which runs on desktop and it's hosted on cloud. And then we have Pollination Cloud for collaboration and cloud computing. For today's presentation, I'll focus on this part, only the CAP plugins. Then let me answer the burning questions. I think there are two of them. So the first one is, can I export my Revit model to IESVE directly from Revit without using Rhino or Grasshopper? So the answer to this is yes. And I'm going just to show you this as the first option that you have. So the first option that you have with Pollination is to get your model from Revit to different platforms, including IESVE. And because I know I'm going to make this mistake, whenever I say IES during this presentation, I mean IESVE. Sometimes I forget the VE part. So this is Revit. You see I have Pollination plugin installed, and this is the PAM tab here for the plugin. So the process is export model. During this presentation, I'm not going to go through all the details of like how you clean up model or what happened. I'm just going to show you the process. We'll have workshops and we have tutorials that you can watch. But the steps are basically here. You set the settings, for example, where the boundary location needs to be. For IS models, you want to put them, ISVE models, you want to put them in center, compute volume, then you can set the tolerance, you can set the arc subdivision. If you have an arc in your model, you have to select the phase, and you can format how you want it to be output. So do you want name, number name? And there are some advanced options for user data that we're not going to use. Then the next step is the place that you basically set up what apertures, and what are the windows and curtain walls that should be considered apertures. We have seen people using walls for apertures. That's why it's available here. So you can select from any of them. You can also select based on material and filter even more. So that's one of the things that we do, right? We just let you pick what the model is more than trying to guess. The next step, you can do the same for doors. Then here is the place that you basically select the levels that you want to export. You select the geometry calculation, window calculation, and you select if you want it to be exported from rooms, spaces, or areas. I keep everything to rooms for now. And you can change the computation height, and you should set the extrusion height based on your section. If you don't do that, the plugin tries to calculate this automatically. Pollination also helps you to create plans that you can review quickly. So I can click here on create floor plan, and this creates a floor plan for me that has all the rooms. They're all visible. Basically, it has its own template for view template here that makes it easier to quickly see how your model looks like. And once you do that, you can go to next step, step 5, which is the place that you can select which rooms you want to be exported. So you can select a limited number of levels, and then from that level, you can also select only a few rooms if you want to run that, to just export those. Next step here is the place that the plugin really goes and parses all those geometries. So right now I'm exporting all the three different levels together. Most likely, if you want to try with your model, you want to do one level at a time to make sure things are right before exporting them. The whole workflow is designed to help you understand what is wrong before it becomes a problem. So for example, one of the features that we have is after parsing, you can select everything here and click on this eye to see a preview. And what it does is going to basically view the analytical model as is and as it will be exported. So you can basically inspect the model here before you export it to the other platform. So great, questions are coming in. What is computational height? So in Revit, for every level, uh, by default, it tries to cut the plan at 0, right? That's the computational height. Then you can change this number to say where do you want it to cut the plan. Depending on how your model is set up, a lot of times you have curtain walls that's on top of a wall, right? If you do a 0, you don't see the curtain wall, so you want to adjust it to be a higher number. Also, did the demo start with spaces created or analytical spaces? So this one is with the rooms. It's not with the spaces. I'm just selecting all the rooms that are in the model. So now you can see my model is here. I can see all the rooms, right? All the windows. And if you know this model, you'll notice that this one is extruded because I use the extruded mode, not detailed mode. That's on purpose to show you more. And one other difference that we have here, because we are using extruded mode, these skylights up here are projected on top of the roof, right? In the real model, they're a little bit extruded. If you want to get them correctly, you have used the detailed mode, but that will take longer. So I'm just going to use extruded here, and this is good enough for an energy modeling purpose. The other things that we have here, you can validate your model. You can validate the whole model, and you can also check room overlaps. This is my favorite one, because if you have rooms that overlap, and it happens in Revit a lot of time, and you don't check them, when you go to IESVE, you get this error that rooms are intersecting, and you have to come back in Revit and fix them. This model doesn't have any issues, but if you have any room overlap issue, it lets you just zoom into that room and fix it inside Revit. So next level, after you check the validation, after you check everything, this is the place that you can select the context shade. I have already selected the context shade. But if you didn't, you have two options. You can select one by one, or you can add them from selection. So you can use all the Revit filtering, everything to select the object and add them here from selection. There is something here that is very important for IESVE, and this is the part that you see this selection here for, let me see if I can remove all of them, if the shade is detached or not. So based on this, we translate, when we go to IESVE, something that's detached will be neighbor building, and the ones that are not detached will be local shades. Hopefully I use the right terminology. So what I'm going to do for all the plants, I'm selecting them to be detached. For all the other shades, they're attached to the building. I can also visualize them here if I want. So again, as I said, at every step of the process, we want just to make sure you can visualize and check what you're exporting, to minimize the issues that can happen. So now I go here next. This is the place for sensor grids. For IESVE, doesn't matter. That's for daylighting workflows. And at this point, you have to select all the rooms. If they're not selected, you can use this to select all. And finally, you can export. And from all the options that we have, I'm going to use IESVE geometry in gem format. And I have already exported it, of course, before, but now I'll overwrite that. Save. Yes. So it will take a few seconds, and then you will get all your geometry exported. One thing that I forgot actually to mention, and I have to go back to show you, is so 102 rooms are exported. It was at this step, not this, step 6, when you parse all the rooms, let it parse the rooms.
Mustafa, while it's
Yeah,
parsing rooms, could you answer Amir's question about
right.
whether or not space names are exported to IESVE as well?
Yes, we'll see it in a few seconds. Yes, the answer is yes. And you can format it to a different way. I mean, again, I'm using rooms here, but if generically you mean like if you use room, area, or space, that name will be exported. Just to confirm, this model only had the architectural rooms on it. I don't know. We can go check, but I'm using the architectural rooms. But you can use MEP spaces. They're basically the same, and or you can use areas. I'll show a slide for that. So what I forgot to mention is there are different options here for solve adjacency. And in this particular case, actually for IES, we don't want to do solve adjacency. You can do solve adjacency, but uh, what's called uh, if you do solve adjacency, you actually make the work for IES IESVE a bit harder. So you want all the faces to be as clean as possible. So you can set this to none. I mean, just to show you it doesn't matter, I'm going to import the other one that has solve adjacency, but the correct approach when you export to IESVE is to not solve adjacency. So now that I have done this, I can go to here to IESVE, file, import, BIM file. I'm in the right folder, go back to gem, and this is the one that I just exported. Open, and everything comes in clean. You can see these are adjacent buildings. These are local shades, and I can press OK, and we will get the model in. So for names, yes, and you can see it's number and name. This was in the first step. I could set this. You can do name and numbers. We had feature requests to be able to add even level. If you want, that's also possible. We have access to all those data. So yes, you get them there. These are the adjacent buildings, and these are the local shades that you get. Let me go to 3D view, and you'll see it here. So the model is already uploaded to GitHub. If you want to download it and run the geometry health check, but you saw when I imported, I didn't get any alerts or any warnings. Um, so this is the model, right? And see here, as I said, the roof is not really matching what it was in Revit, and I'll show you how we can quickly fix that in Rhino. But could you have an example in IP unit? Actually, it doesn't matter what's the unit that you have. When we exported, the initial export is in feet because that's the units that Revit works under the hood. And then when we import it back to IES, because everything is metric, in gem file, everything is metrics. The other question is shafts are also imported as rooms. Yes, because we created them as rooms. If I didn't want to import them, when you go here, right? If there is anything that you don't want to be imported, like a shaft or something, you just don't select them. So you can select whatever you want, and that's what will be exported, or just delete the rooms from inside Revit. So you have full control on what do you want to be imported. Good questions. Thank you. Like this is very engaging, and I like that. So, okay, so that was the first burning question. I'll show more about the Revit plugin and what it does and why things went well. So this is the model that we exported. Now, the next question is usually people ask is just, okay, Gem only does geometry and names. What if I want more? Can I use GBXML to get construction and everything else? So the answer is yes, but then you have to do it, at your own risk. Because if you use the gem format, we guarantee that the geometry and names will be imported in IESVE correctly, right? Anything that happens, you can come back to us and say this didn't work, and we will fix it because we have full control on the whole process. For GBXML, this might happen, and this is the same model. And the challenge there is if it doesn't import correctly, it's hard to know who is really responsible. And then for fixing, if it is on the GBXML import side, we don't have control on that. So you might get lucky and everything goes in correctly, but this might happen too. And we have seen it for much simpler models. For example, vertical shades, we have seen issues like, or we have seen gaps in some of the models that we know there are no gaps and it goes clean with gem. So yes, we consider gem to be the the format that you use. But yes, we have GBXML. You can export it as GBXML and import it as GBXML. Okay, with that, what's Pollination Revit? Pollination, and why does it exist? Before Pollination Revit, this is the life that we had to go through, right? And I have been on the other side, so this was my life. So I even created this package called Dinosaur for Dynamo, mostly to try to convince Autodesk to just fix it because I don't think it should even exist. If you have a BIM platform, you shouldn't have this issue even exist. But it does. And I know a lot of people have concerns, and this is actually someone sent it to me yesterday, but I have received this a lot. People are, I had a bad experience in the past with GBXML. We all have this kind of, I think what's called PTSD now with GBXML. Like, so when does it really work? And it does. It's not perfect. I'm not going to tell you it's a single click, and I'll talk about what are the things that may or may not work. But it works pretty well in comparison to anything else that you have. And you don't have to believe me, right? Just go online or talk to other people who have been using it, and they will tell you that they had successful imports with little to no work, to no rework. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize the amount of rework you have to do when you have a model that's already there. And this is how it looks like, the same model exporting GBXML going through the Revit parser, Pollination Revit parser. This is what you get. And it's actually more than IESVE. And for every other platform, except for Design Builder, which we still use GBXML, we just write directly to their native file format. So we can guarantee that this is something that you can rely on, right? It's not going to break for some geometry and it's going to work for some other geometry. So yeah, that should give you an after and before. So does Pollination Revit plugin uses Revit's built-in analytical model? I already talked about this. No, it doesn't. We have rewritten everything from scratch, and it has been good. Like as I like what Corey said, it's a breath of fresh air. So I hope like we get over this thing of yes, Revit default GBXML export wasn't great. We know like some of the import on software weren't great, but I think we are just getting over that with this new interoperability that's built on top of a format HPJSON that we have developed. Do I need to redraw a model in Revit before exporting to IESVE? No, you don't. I just showed one. But it doesn't mean, again, it's a single click solution, right? There is no magic. As an industry, we're not in a place that you can do single click Revit export. I'm sorry, but that's where we are, right? But we give you all the tools to make it easy for you to make this interaction as seamless as possible. Still, you will save a lot of time, as Levent is mentioning here. So do I still need to clean up the model? It depends, but most likely yes, and you should be open to that. But it doesn't mean you have to redraw everything. This is just, you just go and clean the things that you need to clean. So you're just thinking, what are the things that I need to clean? So most common issues that we have seen in Revit models is room or spaces are not placed. So sometimes you have to go and place them. And this Revit has automatic ways to add rooms, like putting rooms in a Revit model is not that hard. The other one is the Revit has misalignment issues. Sometimes people just draw these separation lines all over the place. This is not correct. Room bounding settings can be wrong, like you have two walls and they're both room bounding. It just gets the center of those, it doesn't match. We have a lot of functionalities to help you with this, and I will show you some. And then finally, there are cases that the model has complex curtain walls and windows that they don't get extracted correctly. We have been through like hundreds of curtain walls and windows at this point, and most cases are managed. But if you still find something that's not, just let us know and we'll help you through. So the way the parser is where it is just by going through every single model. And God, there are so many ways to create a curtain wall or a window in Revit. So yes, that's the place that I think like we still have to do more work, but we have done a lot. And again, like you saw the other comment, it works for most of the models. Um, Let me see. So I'll go through this and then answer some of the questions. So how does it work? How do we make it easier for you? One, as I showed, we give you detailed control on curtain wall panels and windows, so you can say which part you want to be exported. We let you switch between areas, spaces, and rooms. So if you have rooms, architecture rooms, you can work with that. If you draw your own spaces, you can work with that. If you want to draw areas to group some of them, you can work with that. So we have found early on in the projects, actually in architecture models, areas are much more accurate than rooms. And for many energy modeling, like you can use just areas, which for zoning, and then break them down either into in Rhino plugin or directly in IESVE to split it into smaller rooms. The other thing, as I said, we give you partial export, so you don't have to export everything just to start your study. Um, and you can mix these different methods of extruded export and full volume, depending if your model is extruded or full volume. Most of the models that we have seen are extruded, like 90% maybe. But we support full volume. The challenge with full volume is you have to make sure your geometry in Revit is calculated correctly. And it has been challenging for very complex models, but for models like this one, you can get a very clean model out. Then when it comes to misalignment, we have seen this thing of one, because of how Revit models are and they're shared and you don't have the ownership of the geometry, sometimes you cannot change them. Two, sometimes it's really time consuming to go and just edit every single room. So if you want to stay in Revit and you don't want to use Rhino at all, we have this concept of alignment lines. So you basically draw some model lines or reference planes, and you say if a wall is in that alignment distance, then just align it to that line. So this is how it will look like inside Revit. This is how it will look like when you export it. This is an example. This is a hospital, one floor of a hospital, actually. This is how it looks like if you don't change anything. This is how it looks like if you actually draw like the alignment line at the end and merge them. And this is how it looks like when you export it, because it cleans up all those coplanar faces for you during the process. Can I export a curved wall using the Pollination Revit plugin? So if you have a curved wall, yes, you can do that. And we recently added this arc subdivision length control. So you can basically tell Revit that what is the distance that you want the subdivision to happen. So these are two examples of the same room with two different values. You can see this is a smaller and this is larger, so you have control on that. But you also see that if you do like a smaller like this, the line might end up inside the window. So if you don't want to see this, then the way to do it is to just draw the area, between the curtain walls, and then you will get it like 100% accurate or very close to what you have inside Revit. So you have full control on that. Then does Pollination Revit plugin have a limitation for number of room zones that can be exported? I think this question comes from some other tools probably had some limitation on that. No, we don't have any limitation on the number of the rooms. Of course, if you have more rooms, the parsing can take longer, but there is no number for limitation. This is a model with 250 rooms, and I just realized I put the equest one there. But this is 250 rooms exported. And this is another one this is a screenshot from our forum that is 2,030 rooms. So yes, there are no limitation on the number of rooms that you can export. So what if I don't know Revit? Can I still use it? Yes, and glad you asked. So we'll show you. You can do Rhino. You can use Rhino for all that. So the other workflow is to go from Revit to Rhino to IES. This is good if you're not an advanced Revit user, even though you don't need to know much Revit. I mean,
Mustafa,
I'm not an advanced user myself. Yes,
before we go to the Revit Rhino to IESVE, there were some
I,
questions.
I, I
Okay.
will. I will take care
Okay.
of the question. Thank you. But yes, I'm not an advanced Revit user myself, but I prefer much more to get what I call a workable model in Revit and make it a simulatable model in Rhino, simply because it's much faster. How you can clean up models in Rhino than going into Revit and try to clean room by room in your model, even with all the alignment lines and everything. Of course, we are trying to make the Revit plugin better uh, so you don't need much. And we have customers who only use the Revit plugin and go to IESVE directly. But again, that's a choice. So questions here. Wow, so many
There's a
questions.
lot.
Thank you. Okay,
Some
which
of
one should
them
I
have been
answer?
ans some of them have been
Okay,
answered. So I think Montuan's question about rooms in ISVE that get exported from Revit sometimes have their wall surfaces split based on grid lines, which make the
right.
walls choppy.
Sometimes answer. Yes. For that one, there are two ways to solve that. If you use solve adjacency, actually in this case, solve adjacency cleans it up. The other way to do that is go to Rhino, and Rhino has we have a command PO rebuild rooms. And if you use PO rebuild rooms, it merges all those coplanar faces if you set it to yes. Good question. And I think I can actually show in the sample model that I just exported
But
if
like
you want
you
to
also
review.
wouldn't have to place windows and doors in ISVE if the export is happening from Revit, correct?
Right, right. You can
Yeah, because the
select all
doors
the
and
windows
window.
and doors. Okay, I didn't read that part of the question. Yes, if it's about doors, because we had the issue, like for example, there was like one of this large factory, and because how it was modeled, you would get a lot of walls when it would go to IES-VE, and then that one you can just use PO rebuild rooms, and it just merges everything. But yes, for placing window and doors, if you start with Revit and just select them, they should be exported to your model in IESVE. Is there a way to reduce the surface on shadings? Or for example, models that comes with louvers and every window will have thousands of surfaces that make IES model heavier. Yes, for those, do not select those shades from Revit or just select one face because it's not like we do not export all the shades, right? At this step of the process, so if you go in step six, not six, seven, at this step of the process, you have full control of what you want to explore these shades. So you can basically not select anything here or just remove this shade simply, right? So you don't have to export all the shades. It's up to you how many shades you want to be exported. Is there any other questions that I have? Is there a way to use?
Yeah, is there a way to reduce the surfaces on shadings? For example, models that come with louvers on every window will have thousands of surfaces that make the model very heavy.
Right, that's the one that I just answered. Just don't select them.
Yeah.
At step seven, you can just not select them or just select a few and then use them as a guide to draw them. Again, like we don't try to automatically get everything and say these are shades. We don't know what's shade. You tell us this. You basically select the object, right, and then you go you go to that step of the process, and I can now do plus, add shade from selection, and that shade that I just selected was added here as part of the selection. It wasn't part of the export when I was doing it before. So yes, you have
And
full control. That shouldn't be a
did you
problem.
also show the frame versus the glazing?
Yes, I showed it in a
Okay.
step two. So step two for windows. So for curtain walls, we just take the panel. But if you have a window, if they have different materials, then you can remove the material here. So I just remove the material here. If you don't, then you go inside that window family and assign a material to that and then you can reload it and you should be able to filter it. Any other questions?
I think we
No.
got all of them. There was a lot in the chat,
Okay.
so if we missed anyone, feel free to unmute yourself and ask in case we did.
We also have the end of the presentation to get to all of them, or anything is left. Um, can you explain how we got pollination? Is it free? Yeah, I have a slide for that at the end. Yes, I'll explain how you can get it. You can basically go to our website and download it. Okay, so option 2 that I want to show is going from Revit to Rhino and then go to IESVE. And I'm going to fix this part of the model during this process. Okay, how do you do that? To do that, I go back to Revit here, and I have to go through the whole process again to export the HB Sorry, it takes a few seconds. Go here, this. And the reason we reparse everything when you come to step 6, because if you have changed anything in the settings, or if you have changed in the Revit, we don't know about that. So we have to parse them to make sure we get the latest version of your model, if you're wondering. So we do all that, select everything, pressing Control A, going here, and here, and here. So this time, instead of exporting it as a gem file, I'm going to export it as HBJSON format. HBJSON is the format that we use for all the interoperability inside the whole pollination ecosystem, and also in with Ladybug tools. You can think about it as very similar to GBXML. So now that I have HBJSON, this is Rhino, and I have Pollination Rhino plugin installed, which means I can open an HBJSON file. So this is the one that I just exported, I believe. So let me open it here. There is a validation when you import the model. For now, I'm going to select no. You can always run the validation, and you should always run the validation. So this is the model that came in. And now you see this additional shade that I selected last minute, right, is there. So I can click here to see this better. And actually, this is a good example of like how to simplify shades, right? So we have all this faces here. So you probably don't want all of those. Like just one face is enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use command PO select. So the first thing is I'm going to try to hide everything else, right? To clean up so you can only see the shades. So PO select shades. Then I'm going to use the command isolate. So everything that's selected is isolated. And I'm going just to delete this. Someone was asking. So one of the other ways, if you have like so many shades, just bring in Rhino and delete the ones that you don't want. Then I'm going to run the command show because I hid everything. So now they should come back. Now that it came back, so I want to fix this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this center or middle of the, okay, let me actually, that was a comment that people said. Let me put it in shaded so it's easier to see what's the geometry. So I'm going to split the face in the center here, and then I am going to move it down for 2.6 here. And one of the things that happens, speaking of units, when I imported it into Rhino, it was in feet. As I said, when it exports it, it uses the default version of Revit to keep it as accurate as possible, right? So now let me go here and do the distance here. So distance from here, perpendicular. So this should be 2.63. So I'm going to bring this 2.6. And then to make it easy, there are two ways. I can either go edit in place, or again, I like isolate much more because it gives you only one, right? So now you can see this room here. So now I can go and just try to edit this. So I'm going, again, turn this off. PO edit in place is the command. Actually, I'm going to show both of them. So I'm going to select this room. And now the first thing is I'm going to delete all these apertures because they don't really exist, right? It was part of the other one. Then I'm going to use a split face, which is a Rhino command, right? Because I can now, that allows me to select this face and split it from middle to middle. And finally, I can basically go and use a command called move edge to move this edge. And click from here, near, and then 2.6, and click. So now this is the new room. So everything there is fixed. Uh, and I click exit, and the room is valid. Everything is valid. So answering the other question that some of the walls are chopped. So you see this one is chopped because um, this one export from Revit, and there are two different walls. So this is the command that I mentioned. You can do PO rebuild uh, rooms, rebuild rooms, and then set merge coplanar faces to yes. You don't need this for now. For boundary condition, I don't need. Fixed door windows, I don't need that. So I just select this, and then this basically resolves it. So any coplanar faces that are splitted, then they will be merged using this simple command. So that's one thing that I wanted to do. So that's a good time to save the file. And one of the other things that you can do, you can actually save the file as a 3DM uh, Rhino format. That means basically your Rhino model will be your analytical model. It has all the information and everything that has there. So the other thing that I'm going to do, I said like that shade was complicated. So I'm going to create a simplified shade. To do that, I can do extrude curve and use this curve here, and then set the direction of the curve. And as I'm doing this, I know like for some of the energy modelers, this is just too much 3D. And we understand that. And we have a handful number of videos for like kind of Rhino for energy models. We never named them like that. But that's something that we need to understand better too. Like what are the things that you don't know how to do and you need videos? Rhino, I know it can look very complicated when you get it started, but it's very powerful from geometry perspective. And I'll show some integration with Grasshopper. It helps you to just do things that you had to do one by one, like very quickly for the whole model. And that's why I think it is worth spending time to learn some Rhino. So I created both geometries. Now I'm going to go here and add them as building shades. Done. So now they are building shades. Let me do this so we can see it visually. And then I do show, and everything else should show up. And this is a good time probably to answer some questions before I save this again. Or maybe let me finish this and then I can answer questions. So now I'm going to do save as. Um, there are different formats. If you press I, you should see IESVE here for GEM. And then this is the one from Rhino. So I save that. Yes, replace the one that I already have. And this again takes a few seconds to export. And now I can go here, close this file, new project, quick create new, and then file import, BIM file, gem, and select the one from Rhino. And just to make sure the options are here, so it checks all this intersection and everything. And again, this model is already on GitHub if you want to test it on your end. And it should come in with no issues. This time I should get this roof modeled correctly, and I should have the shades, as you can see there. So this is that. And of course, a 3D view, so we make sure everything looks correct. Any questions?
So there aren't any questions in the chat during this part that came in. Um, but if anyone has any questions, they
No?
can unmute.
Great. Let me just continue then. Um, so we covered that. We covered Rhino, and this is my final live demo. So from here are only slides. So what's Pollination Rhino plugin? Pollination Rhino plugin is basically the goal is to make the best tool for generating building performance analysis geometry, right? Combining what Rhino provides from geometry perspective and what Pollination provides from all the cleanup routines, like all the energy simulation, metadata, all those stuff. That's what the Rhino plugin is. It lets you build very large and complex models easily. We have routines, validation routines that shows you exactly where the errors are before they become an issue in your simulation, so you can go and fix them. This is another one that basically shows faces that are very close but are not exactly matching. Then not only we have things to help you find them, we have commands to automate fix. For example, this is the one that you get these GBXMLs that are exported from some plugins, and you get it in all these windows and doors all over the place. A single command put them together. Then we have this case of, windows and apertures are like splitted. And this is something that we can also generate with some of the windows that are not really nice. So you can fix them by a command to rebuild them. Basically, you can say make them rectangular, and like fit them, or do you want to offset them in? That's also a single command. My favorite, these kind of models, this is again another hospital building, a lot of ducts. You get all this, like wall thicknesses are changing next to the hallways. And then this is like fixing this is really painful if you want to do it manually. So we have automated workflows for this. One is what we call aligning plan. So you just draw that lines that you want to align. You select the rooms and you say align it to this one, right? And of course you put a tolerance so not everything gets aligned. So that's one. Then this is good, I think. Then you have this command that basically aligns it to a room. Sometimes you have a hallway and you want everything to be aligned to that hallway. You don't want to draw all those lines, so you can use be aligned to room. And then this one, you will see that it basically aligned everything to that hallway that we had in the center. And the most recent one is sometimes you have all this, and what you want to just remove all these short edges that you see in the model. So you can select all the rooms. You can basically say what is the shortest segment that you want to keep. And you see it visualizes how it will look like after being cleaned. Then you can apply that, and it basically replaces all those rooms with the new rooms. You can see like there are places that you still get something, but those are easy to fix depending on the distance. So from this to this, you can go in around 15 minutes, or at least that was the time that it took me to do the whole YouTube video. You can go faster now because at the time we didn't have that remove short segments that took a lot of time for a lot of this. So I think it's a brutal quality of life enhancement if you used other tools for creating other, like your analytical models. And you can also create everything in scratch from Rhino. So if you are more like someone who is comfortable with 3D modeling and going into Rhino. So that's the third option that you have to go directly from Rhino. We built the Sydney Opera House as an example and exported it everywhere, including IESVE. So you can see like from geometry perspective, you do not have limitations. As long as it's a valid model and all the faces are planar and we have the tools to help you build that, then we take responsibility of the exports to be exported correctly. And there is a video. We'll share these slides with you so you can go watch. I also included other videos that we have. So we have several videos on YouTube so you can watch how to do this stuff from Rhino and in Rhino. And honestly, I think like this is again was from yesterday. I'm happy more people are sharing this on LinkedIn. Just stop redrawing geometry. That's what we are trying to do. You will save a lot of time, and I know about the PTSD of GBXML, but I think you should give it a fair try because it will save you a lot of time. So the other thing that came up, which was interesting, is people want to go between platforms. So if you have Energy Plus Open Studio models, you can actually export them now to IES-VE, like if you want to do some studies there and some studies here. This one is a tutorial that shows you how to go from Open Studio to Rhino, do some check and cleanup, go to eQuest and IESVE. Then I left the video here so you can click play when you get the slide. You can also go the other way around. So we had someone came and said, like, I have this IESVE model. We modeled it there. We want to go to eQuest to run other studies. And yes, you can do that too. We have an import for gem format too. So you can export a gem, bring it into Rhino, clean it up, and take it to eQuest or take it to Energy Plus, Open Studio, wherever you want. Again, there is a video that you can watch. Do you have an example file with more complex geometry if that was not complex enough? Yes, this is a project by Thornton Tomasetti and Thomas Saraceno. Yes, hopefully I pronounced it correctly. That they basically modeled this. It had a lot of complexity, and they used IESVE to do the modeling, and they used the Rhino plugin to create the geometry. So yes, I don't know if this would have been possible without the Rhino plugin, but that's one of the examples. Do you support local shades in adjacent buildings? Yes, we do. I already showed it. In Revit, you just set that detached versus not being detached. In Rhino, you select the geometry and you set if it's a local shade, and they will be exported as local versus adjacent building. Can I simplify apertures not to export every panel as a separate window? We get this a lot from energy modelers. Yes, you can. In Revit, you can select simple ratio instead of detailed. So this is what would have happened if I would have selected simple ratio. So this is the detail that I just showed. This would have been simple ratio. So you just change it from drop down, and then it calculates the window to our ratio and puts it in the center. You can also do it in Rhino. This is a recent command. In Rhino, you have more flexibility, so you can just select the ones that you want. In Revit, it's per floor that you can, or per level. But of course, in Rhino, you can also select everything, and it will work. And it's a little bit different how it positions in Rhino. Rhino, it calculates the average of the input. In Revit, it just puts it in the center of the face. They're both good. So what is this? Can I export rooms with holes to IESVE? So this was a limitation that we had originally. That's why I put it here so people are aware of. Yes, and you don't need to do anything. So we do all the split of the faces automatically now. If it's doable, we try to do only two faces. If it's not, then it will be a mesh. It will be a clean mesh, but it will be a mesh. Can I create gem files from inside Grasshopper? Yes, you can also do that too. So Grasshopper plugin, there are two ways of using it. You can directly, if you're Ladybug Tools users, you can combine it with Pollination and then export it to IESVE directly. Or you can, if you have a Rhino model, you can bring it into Grasshopper with a single component and reuse it. So I have two videos for that. So this is how it looks like in Grasshopper. Load model from Rhino is a component that helps you bring the model in. This export to gem is the one that helps you export it to gem. I found this online, and I wasn't sure. Actually, I asked Liam, so do you have to make this manual? I know this is not a lot of work, but this is one of those things that if you want to create it, you can use Grasshopper. So I put a script together just to show. So this is that example, but it has some control on shade depth, so you can change that. You can change the maximum minimum of the window to our ratio if you change your mind. You can also quickly, for example, change the number of rooms if you want to have more rooms. So you want to do a study with more variation of window to our ratio, and then you can save it to a gem file. And of course, you can import it and do all your studies inside IESVE. Yeah, so that's an example. I think I go back and then change the shape depths back to 1. And I should have set that save gem to false, so it would have been faster, but it doesn't matter. So now you can see the new model has the shades to 1. You can also do shades, parameterize shades if you want, but that's one thing. This is how the script looks like. So those are the inputs. There is a logic of Grasshopper, and there is a file, there is a component here to write to gem. This is how it looks like, and you can see you can use you can name them based on direction. You can include window to our ratio and all those stuff. You can also go from Rhino. So in this case, I have that model in Rhino and I want to add shades. So I bring the model. There is a component here that automatically adds shades. It has some control like angle, depth, number of shades, all the things that you usually want. Then you just do that, export it to gem, right? You change your mind and say, okay, I want to study something else, horizontal and only 1, whatever the unit is, 1 feet in this case, and update, and you get that. So basically, you can do all this different type of interoperability geometry. So I know I mentioned a lot, so these are my last slides. Let me wrap it up. So these are all the workflows possible for exporting your model from Pollination ecosystem to IESVE. One is you can go directly from Revit, or you can go directly from Rhino, or you can go from Revit to Rhino to IESVE, or you can go from Rhino to Grasshopper, go back to Rhino and go to IESVE, or go directly from Grasshopper to IESVE, depending on what you need. For reusing your gem files, if you have gem files that you want to use, you can go to Rhino, and then from Rhino, you can go to all the other BPS, building performance simulation software that we support. And you can go to Grasshopper and go from there. Or actually, you can go from Grasshopper back to Rhino and go from there if you want. So where can I find your pricing? Someone was asking. It's on our website. Unlike many other software that you know, like our prices are on our website. We haven't changed them. We might change them in the future. I don't think in the near future, but they're all there. We have monthly purchase that you can buy as a subscription, and no, like you can cancel at any point, no questions asked. If when you know you really want to use it, you can move to annual, so you get 1 month for free. And we have a bundled option because so many people who want to buy Rhino and Revit together, so you get a discount on that if you bundle them. Basically, Rhino will be half price in that case. Then, is there a trial period if you want to test it? Yes, we have 14 days. You can just do that for 14 days and try that, and you can start for free. Everything that I showed today is like you have access to. Like there is nothing that we haven't developed that I put there. So everything is developed, everything has been tested. We have been using these commands now for more than 2 years, a lot of them. So just go and try it. Again, I told you, like it's not going to be like everything works in the first try, but when you learn it, it does work. I hope I was able to show that. Can I reach for help? Yes, absolutely. You can reach for help if you want to test it with your models. We have seen that as the most successful way of showing people, because if you have a model that you have problems and you start with that, we can help you with that to understand. Best place to get started, we have Pollination Docs and YouTube channel. There are several topics that you can go through. There are video tutorials and uh, all that. Where should I ask my questions? So all your questions you should ask on Pollination Discourse forum. It's a very active forum, and now you can find like for 2-3 years of content there. So a lot of your questions are probably have been answered already, and you can download and review all the gem files that I just showed. They are already on GitHub. It's GitHub Pollination sample models. I saw that Junkie uh, shared the link, but there is Revit Advanced, Revit Basic, and Sydney Opera House. I don't know if Revit Basic, I copied the gem file. Well, I can do that too. Then are there any upcoming workshops? So if you're interested really to learn, go through this. We have 2 upcoming workshops, or I should say 4, because each, or 6 to be accurate. So 4 online, virtual, and 2 in person. Uh, the ones in Chicago Innovate Workshop are virtual. For AEC Tech in New York, we do 2 uh, that are virtual and 2 in person, and all of them are for Rhino plugin and Revit plugin. So if you want to learn how to use them better, basically this is your chance in the next month. Thank you so much, and with that, we already answered a lot of questions, but we have 5 more minutes. I think we go a little bit over. I'm sorry, but let's go. What are the questions that I should answer?
Hey, so I'm going to work backwards here. What version of Revit, Rhino, and IESVE are minimum requirements for this workflow to work?
So ISVE, I don't know the answer, but I don't think the gem file format has changed for a very long time. So you should be fine, whatever version that you have. I have 2012. For Rhino, you need to have Rhino 7. For Revit, we support from Revit 2019 to 2024. Maybe not 2019, but yes, all of that. You can do Rhino 6 too, actually, but it's if you have Rhino 7, it will be easier. Rhino 6, you have to open it 3 times because how it loads the DLLs, and we should be supporting Rhino 8 as Rhino will be released soon. Okay.
Okay. And then there is a question about what happens when you have a room entirely within a room when you're exporting.
It will be the same. Like this is basically the one here. This is a room inside the room. So this room was exported and this walls were broken. So you get this room as is, and then you get the other room around it. It's just handled the same way as it's a whole. For IES, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there was a question about alignment fixing, which Mingbo answered. Um,
So I see a comment from Devang, like, yes, so these models, ISV already know it does daylight modeling, but we have seen people using this model for doing like, more custom daylight simulation, either using Pollination or Ladybug tools. So yes, the model in Rhino is also can be used, the same model can be used for daylighting um, and comfort
okay,
studies and all that.
wonderful. And then Victor had a question about importing any non-geometry data into IES from
So I think,
pollination.
yeah,
Yeah.
you joined probably late. I had a slide for that. So you can use GBXML on your at your own risk. And I will be in touch. I haven't reached out recently, but now that geometry is in a stable place, if there is a different way to get construction in or schedules, I'll be open to implement that. The only thing is just for GBXML, we have challenges, or maybe it's something to discuss with IESVE team that they get geometry from GEM, but then there is a way to update all the metadata from a GBXML format, for example. Yes, right now the only way to do it is to use GBXML, which should work. Any other?
Oh, yeah. Jesse's saying that air walls used to read as plywood when he tried it the last time to bring GBXML data in.
Oh, for GBX. No, if you use, is it GEM or GBX? Because if you use our GEM form, our the Rhino or Revit plugin, air walls will come in as holes. Uh, so right now we have good support for that. So where can I find the recording of this meeting? We will send a follow-up email. So you'll get a link, and it will be on our YouTube channel. Okay,
Okay.
Victor, stay tuned. Uh, we will see where it goes with the metadata. But that's definitely something that we're interested. Anything that can make your life easier, not to redraw your models like 10 times, that's something that we are interested and we're committed to make it happen on the pollination side. Um, yes, that's what we built this. So yes, if there is something that can help you to use this, not to redraw your models from scratch, just reach out and we will be more than happy to help you with that. So we are at time. Do we have any other questions that I missed? So if you have any other questions, you can, at this point, you can unmute yourself and ask. Um, if I don't know if I did reply, and there's so many questions. Thank you for your help with the questions too.
Yeah, it's just comments. I think we're done with questions.
Room entirely with your, okay. Okay, great.
Hello.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
just one question.
Go
So
ahead.
I was exporting a model from Revit uh, into IES, so using pollination, and I had a problem where I observed that the windows weren't. So some of the windows were exported as only glazing, whereas some others with the glazing and frames, even though I had unticked the frames. And I think it has to do something with the families.
Right, how the family is set up. That's
Yes.
something that if you post an example, I can help you to solve that on the forum because
Okay.
that's too much detail for like this call. But
Okay.
yes, that's depending on how it is created, you might need to go. So it's about type and instance, like, is it a type material or instance material? And I'm very new to those two, but I have figured my way around. So I think like you can do the same. So if you can share an example, we can help you with that.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Answer that. Yes. And if anyone is watching this in the future, we are just redoing everything for Windows to give you a better experience and more control on how you can export Windows from Revit. The curtain wall is in a very stable place right now already. And thank you for all the great comments here. Uh, And as usual, without you guys, this would have not existed. So thank you yourself. You should thank yourself for supporting us during the process, all the feedback. And any of you like who have interacted with our team, we are very responsive and we really love feedback and we listen. And if there are things that can be implemented, we will implement it. So it just takes you just typing an email or sending something on Discourse. Please do that. That will help everyone, including yourself. Okay, with that, I think like let me change the final slides to this so it doesn't going to be like do it at your own risk. Thank you so much for joining. Again, the recording will be available, and we will see you online. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks. Take care.